Power, speak a little louder.
If there was a pill.
Hungry for that money.
This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. What I'm looking at today is 2020's Project Power, directed by Joost and Ariel Schulman. And I have to admit, I didn't expect much from this movie when it started. For a start, if you recall the scene where Jamie Foxx's character parks his truck in front of this decrepit apartment building, notice there's a name on that truck. I believe it's pronounced Supermarch. Now, the problem with that is Supermarch is also the name of the collective that Joost and Schulman are a part of. It struck me as very self-indulgent. And let's be honest, these guys aren't Hitchcock or Scorsese or someone like that. So it struck me as a really presumptuous thing to do. And also, it reminded me too much of McG, whose name I believe is McGinty. And to call himself McG always struck me as a little bit cunty and irritating. So I didn't like that. And the hotel itself looked like it was taken from Kung Fu Shuffle, which is a great martial arts comedy. And obviously it's different. I'm not saying it was an exact replica, though I am saying it was visually very similar to it. So right off the bat, I was not feeling great about this movie. But I have to admit, it's pretty damn good. Part of what makes this movie work is that it's similar to movies you've seen, but it tends to do what they try to do better. Project Power revolves around this new drug on the streets, which gives people, no, I should say, it either kills you or gifts you with certain abilities. So people take this drug to do certain tasks more than anything else. As far as the movie shows, there's no high involved with it. It just enables certain capabilities in the user. It also runs the risk of killing a user. Now, this is not a new idea at all. In fact, watching the movie reminded me very much of George R.R. Martin's Wild Card series. And that revolved around an alien virus which is spread, infecting people, giving them super abilities. Some had desirable abilities, some not so much. So the idea of this movie is not at all original, but that's okay. As I implied, execution is really good. And as I was saying earlier, it will remind you of movies that you have seen before, though not done as well. For instance, this movie is so like Fantastic Four in certain ways that it's uncanny. In the sense that you have a guy with pyrokinetic type abilities. You have a guy who stretches. You have a guy that's actually, in some ways, similar to The Thing. It's almost as if the filmmakers were mocking that movie. Now, I'm obviously not saying that they were, though this feels to me like this is what the Fantastic Four movie should have been. And that's a little weird. It's also very similar to X-Men: The Last Stand, the movie in a series directed by Brett Ratner. And it is better than both of those movies, let's be clear. But it's also similar in the way things are approached and things are responded to. It's pretty fascinating, though I think it's probably most like Heroes, as long as you include the addition of some drug which gives people special abilities. And another thing that I enjoyed about this movie is that the lead actress, played by Dominic Fishburne, is really good. I tend not to like movies with young people as leads because oftentimes they're very irritating. They don't typically act like a young person would act, and it's grating. It just gets on my nerves. So to see her performance as this dealer of this narcotic, well, dealer of this drug, it's not a narcotic, but in any case, her performance was refreshing, it was very realistic, it was funny at times, serious at others, and it felt like a young person responding to extraordinary events. As I said, I really enjoy that. It reminds me in some ways of the performance of Aidan Gallagher as number 5 in The Umbrella Academy. Different performances, but they both work, though for not the same reasons. So I like that a lot. And I'm finding that there are indeed performances by young people as leads that I enjoy, which is kind of cool. If I recall, the runtime of Project Power is about an hour and a half. That's a really good running time, and it shouldn't be, unless there's some pressing reason for it to be longer, it shouldn't be. And so that works. Though at the same time, the pacing is a bit off. It doesn't always flow as well as it should. I think in the last half hour, it's probably at its strongest. Though it's a little spotty in terms of pacing. That doesn't mean it's not enjoyable or worth watching. Though it doesn't quite flow as well as I think it should. It's still pretty good regardless, though. I have to admit that most of the time, I'm not a huge fan of Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's not that he's a bad actor, he's actually quite good, but I don't find him particularly interesting. Though he is interesting here. He plays a police officer who uses this drug to help him be a better cop, though knowing full well that it's illegal. And his performance is at times very dramatic, but also at times very humorous. It's really clever how his character is used, and I really like seeing him in this. In fact, I think he would be a prime candidate to play a character like Nightwing in movies. Well, after The Dark Knight Rises, I guess that's probably a pretty common speculative thing, but he would really work well in those type of roles if he exercised a little more. A little bit flabby, but still good performance. Jamie Foxx is Jamie Foxx, which is to say, I'm not sure he can do a bad performance. He's pretty good here, and what's interesting about his character is that you don't quite know, at least initially, why he's doing what he's doing. And he's pretty interesting, though the final really works. A few things I didn't think worked very well was, as I mentioned, there was the pacing. I thought it could be a bit tighter. Another thing is that this drug doesn't really make sense, in the sense that, according to the movie, it gives powers or it kills people. In the entire movie, numerous people take it. It killed, if I recall, one person. Other than that, it gives you powers. Those are pretty good odds, I think, that you're going to be just fine. And the length of time that these powers last, I believe, is something like 4 minutes. So whatever you're doing with these newfound abilities, you have 4 minutes to do it. And it also seems that once it's determined that you have these abilities by taking the pill, you can continually do it because it seems to have no side effects and it's consistent. So let's say if by taking this pill I had armored skin. Every time I took it, I would have armored skin. It wouldn't change. It would remain consistent. And as I said earlier, it wouldn't harm me. And that's part of the problem. The movie sets up this devil's bargain type scenario in that if you take the pill and you're not right for it, for whatever reason, it kills you. As I said earlier, that only happened once. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character takes it constantly, and it has no ill effect. So that's a problem, at least for me. And I would have liked it better if it was more risky. I think there's a lot of drama in that. If it had perhaps a narcotic effect, because also, as I said earlier, there's no, well, only a potential death. But there's no real downside to doing this drug, and a hell of a lot of benefit. But beyond the abilities it potentially will give you, there's no real drive to take it. In a sense, there's no downside. I think the movie would have been better if the drug were more of a narcotic, if the chance of you blowing up upon taking it was a real risk, it's not. And that's not, I wouldn't say it's a minor point, but it's certainly one that I wish the filmmakers and the writer had better addressed. But that being said, Project Power is really good. I think it's a step up for Netflix movies. It's extremely theatrical. It looks great. As I mentioned earlier about the Human Torch and the Bindi guy, the special effects are really high class. And the fire effect in this movie is probably one of the best I have ever seen in movies. It's a person on fire, but the way it's done, it looks very good. It looks very realistic, and it's shot very well. And it's just beyond anything I've yet seen in movies. It looks really great. It's a great looking production. It's a very good movie. If you like superheroes, if you like action, you're going to enjoy Project Power. This is Brian with ScreenFiles.com in review. Do you agree? Disagree? Let me know down below. And since you're there, consider a like or a follow. Peace.